Okay, so first of all, we like to start in this way. Today, the Professor Majdi already mentioned my lecture topic on the COVID-19 and global supply chain. So basically, we are going to discuss about the impact of COVID-19 upon the global supply chain. If you anybody ask at this moment that which part of our sector, manufacturing or service industry, mostly affected during the COVID-19, the answer should be the healthcare industry. The healthcare industry, they are facing lots of supply chain disruption during the COVID-19. So that is the best example of what is the impacting all over the world. The same scenario, global supply chain upon the health are also available in the transportation, warehouses, supply of the raw materials, procurement, distribution channel, so on. I think I remember that I use these functions and activities and then facilities when I discuss the basic supply chain. So today it's also our thinking to understand disruptions are available in the transportation side. What type of disruption? What type of disruption in the warehouses? What type of disruption in the raw materials? What type of disruption in the procurement distribution channel? We have to discuss. Would you please turn off your microphone, please? Thank you. So you understand that disruption is everywhere. So if you're starting this, so that means you have to understand the scenario, global scenario. Even the basic something like the rural farm level, you understand, very raw material supply, rural farm level, are not getting the fair price of their production. So that means the problem is not only the demand side, problem is the supply side, problem is the factory side, shipment, transportation, distribution, everywhere. That is our COVID-19 impact. This is the one example. What I said, I give you the one example. This is the best on our country. This is Chittagong port. We call it Chattogram port in Bangladesh, the largest port in our country. And this is the one scenario. You can see this one that basically you know that in supply chain, when you design the supply chain, it's based on the 4 pillars like planning, sourcing, making, and delivery. So this is based on the month of April and May, 2020 during the COVID-19 time. So planning is good, no problem, because planning the decision maker, they can take the lots of decision. But question is that sourcing, making, delivery. You understand, making, we need the human resource, we need the factory open. How we manage the social distancing. Sourcing, we need the suppliers. But the question of the suppliers, how many suppliers you have? Delivery, you need the transportation, distribution channel. Again, you need the human resource for the delivery. So planning is okay. I do not want to say excellence is good, but sourcing, making, and delivery. So that. And if you ask me now, I mentioned this example the month of April and May. If you ask me now July, I use the sourcing, making, delivery also worst. And the planning also collapsed, so it's bad. So situation day by day they deteriorated. That is our discussion in the global supply chain. You know that if you look very carefully, that the demand for sugar, lentil, edible oil, flour, grams goes up 20 to 30% increase during the April and month. That time it was our Ramadan time. I think the Muslim people they understood Ramadan, April and May, and the demand for the tracks rise at 20% during this time. Demand was very high at that time, but Chittagong ports, you understand, look very careful, ports, storage capacity. The storage capacity, you see that 49,019 20 feet equivalent unit. But that time, they have the products is available, the 49,468. If you compare this one, you understand that what is the situation is there. 11 vessels and jetties were waiting for the offloading of goods. And another 30 containers vessels at the outer anchorage for berthing. So look, this is the situation. I just give one example so they can understand. So it means that activities of the Chittagong port in Bangladesh have become to a standstill as the amount of import containers exceeded the port store's capacity due to the slow delivery of products during the shutdown time. So our question is that if the situation is like that, how we can go to the next stage?
Sorry to interrupt. We have 4 minutes left.
Only 4 minutes? Dr.
Yes, sir.
Majdi, can you allow me another few minutes so that I can finish?
How long do you need? Another 10 minutes?
10 minutes is okay. Okay, minutes, inshallah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my good friend, can you manage it? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, Majdi.
Sorry. I understood the situation. This very interesting thing is that if you look very carefully this way, the scenario is that then how we can come up with our ultimate target, the customer, reach to the customer. I just give the two examples. Another two example. General Manager of Citigroup is one of the two largest commodity conglomerates in Bangladesh. Said they are facing the disruption in three areas: port, production, factory, and transportation. Look very carefully. This is the problem everywhere they're facing: the port problem, so that the production, factory, and transportation. On the other hand, the large business conglomerates in our country, the Magna Group, Industry, City Group, Abul Khair Group, Akis Group, Bosundara Group, they're facing the disruption in the supply chain amid the shutdown. And now come to the question is that how the resilience in supply chain, flexibility in supply chain. So this is the new consensus that more resilience, more flexibility in supply chain will be needed in the wake of this extreme uncertainty. I think that here there are lots of supply chain experts. They have to think, they have to decide, they have to discuss about these issues. This is the something that for some this involves the building up the stockpiles and buffer inventories to provide more give in the system. But buffering is the one solution. But problem is that warehousing comes at greater cost. The cost is high. If the warehousing cost is very high, that is the what just-in-time deliveries aim to the resolve. So there is something. So you can see there is a sequential problem is coming. So what I mentioned that it's now time to the time we have to think about the resilience, means flexibility in the supply chain. And now it's the time we have to think that how we can ensure the just-in-time. If you look very carefully, suppose the small business have the enough cash in reserve to keep them solvent for 27 days. There's some data, I don't want to talk too much, but unfortunately, it is not possible for the large industry. The companies such as the Unilever have already agreed to pay the supplier earlier. Unilever decided they'd like to pay supplier earlier, but do you think that all kind of companies they have the situation like the Unilever for financial growth? So that is something. Financing arrangement will need to adapt to give the smaller supplier better access to working capital. And that's why different country, even the developing country, even if you look very carefully, our country, Bangladesh, India, the government, they're doing some the financing to the small business people because there is no other option without the financing. That is a very important slide, but I couldn't discuss in details. I just show the main key points so that you can understand. If you look very carefully, these manufacturing companies buffer the two waves: global supply chain disruption and internal operational regional disruption. So once we have to talk about the global supply chain internally, what is happening, internal operational regional disruption, and the outside the global supply chain disruption. And if you look very carefully here, you can see this one. Say this is the raw material supplier and entire suppliers, and there is other something, distribution, retailer, and other something. But look very carefully. Critical raw materials with limited global availability, critical raw materials with limited global availability are affected, leading to long period of capacity storage. You see, long period of capacity storage. And if you go back to the next, suppose here, supplier components or modules suffers from undetected broken supply chain or entire level. Because the entire level, there's lots of supply, but we don't know why is it broken. And you like to find out this one, this is another time consuming and we cannot ensure the just-in-time delivery. Look very carefully. Suppose the outside, even the plants outside of affected areas are impacted by shortage of few crucial parts and have the completely shut down. So that means all of the complicated. If you look very carefully, the manufacturing during the COVID-19 impact, this is the happening that we couldn't maintain this supply chain properly, disruption of supply chain. So let's go to this one. This is some things we have to face supply chain in several ways. We can in the demand for some companies, but some of the companies skyrocketing demand with selected companies. If you look carefully, Microsoft demand is very high. Cisco, they're doing a very good business at this moment. Any kind of IT, they're doing a very good business. Can uncertainty of in raw materials, impacting the ability to receive the products on time due to the shortage and logistic bottlenecks. I think you understand the bottleneck problem is again coming here due to this COVID-19 time. Workforce capacity. So we need this workforce capacity to assemble and ship the products. So we are facing this problem as well. Okay, so I like to give some suggestion so that I don't want to talk too much. This is the one best example of that from the Apple and other from the Samsung. So regarding these issues that how they're handling. Now you know that Apple they're planning that they have to move to from China they like to move to the India, Vietnam, and Mexico. You see the business scenario is going to change. So everything is going to be changed. Samsung, this is the same problem they're facing. They're planning that they like to move to from the South Korea to the other places as well. So that the lots of options will be there. If the one option is the call of the another option, or the other 2 or 3 options will be open. Okay, so first of all, there is some consideration, short-term action consideration. So now how we can cope up with this one? Scenarios. Try to understand the scenario. What kind of scenario? Financial scenario. Operational impact. So we have to try to understand this one. Understand the financial and operational impact across the multiple scenarios. Look very carefully. So this example I mentioned earlier, the Walmart and Tesco. Check this one, supply and demand balance. Focus on balancing supply and demand. And what I mentioned last 2 slides before, the building the buffer stock. But again, if you stock the buffer, then the question of the inventory cost will be high. Why is the cost will be high? That is the another how we can balance it. We use the term the balance trade-off. Supply and financial health. Evaluate the financial health of your key suppliers. Look very carefully. Those are your suppliers, their financial health. To assess the potential impact to your supply chain. It's a very important thing. You have to check supply financial health. We are talking about this on scenario, financial scenario, operational impact, supply demand balance, supply financial health. We have to check very carefully when you come to the decision. If you look very carefully, that mid to long-term consideration. What is that? First of all, you have to check the micro supply chains. Look very carefully. This is the slide is very important for discussion for the panelists. I think they will add more values after this my discussion. Build agility and speed into your supply chain by creating micro supply chains, finite, decentralized, agile, mini operating models. Mini operating model with a flexible supplier contracts. Look very carefully. Flexible supplier contract and relationship with manufacturing closer to the point of purchase. So now we have to plan. Manufacturing should be closer to the point of purchase, close to the supplier. Explore strategies to buy where you make and make where you sell. Look, micro supply chain. Buy where you make and make where you sell. Secondly, the supply diversification. Assess opportunities to diversify the supply base. You look, diversified supplier. Identify the geographically diverse suppliers to onboard in the event of emergency. Geographically diverse suppliers. Consideration should be given to the dual sourcing of critical components. If you know this is a critical components, there is a question of the shortage. You have to depend on the dual sourcing rather than one source. Finally, the supply chain strategize. Move away from an adversarial short-term approach toward a long-term strategy of driving value. Look, driving value, you have to add the values. Short-term approach toward a long-term strategy. Critical test, revise your strategy. Again, you should not depend on the one strategy at this moment. Every time you have to revise. What I said that the month of February, the businessmen, what they were thinking, month of March, April changing, and now they understood it will not be finished now. It will take another few months. So periodical test, revise your strategy to account for organizational growth and environmental change. So it is very important discussion for the mid to long term consideration. So I think I do not want to spend more time. I like to take this. Can I take the another 2 to 3 minutes, Professor Majdi? 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
He doesn't want to say yes. Thank you so much. Okay, so you know that this is very interesting thing is that if you look very carefully, now we have to go to the lean manufacturing principles. That how we can do this one rather than better that the widespread of our strategy. And then what I mentioned earlier, this is very important that we have to think the modern supply chain, how we can manage this one. When the Chinese factory closed, manufacturers struggled to pivot due to the lack of flexibility in their supply base. You know that most of the supplies come in from the China. So likely consequence is that global firms will diversify their supply chain in the future instead of relying only on China. So the time is that we have to think about these issues, how we can manage it. Maybe the Vietnam, Mexico, or India, that will be the next stage. or you have to think the multi suppliers. So what I mentioned here, this trend, which the likes of automation, so go to the automation, small batch production, which had become so cheap that a number of countries started moving portions of the supply chain back home. Look very carefully here. The transition to a new model for supply chains will be underpinned by rapid wholesale digitization. Again, we are using this one. We have to go to the digitization rather than physical information sharing or the paperwork that accompanies global trade. So that is the very important thing, is that we have to now think about this on how we can go for automation, how we can go for the small batch production, how we can go to the the digitization. Let's see this last slide. First of all, what you mentioned earlier, that we are working on that for a long time about this one. Despite the rapid advances in technology, the relationship between buyers and suppliers remains predominantly paper-based. So, digitizing the buyer-supplier relationship is a fundamental element for building robust supply chain, and will make the identified and recruiting new suppliers far less time-consuming. So go back to the few suppliers, choose the one this time, next this one. Do not wait for the one supplier. Do not wait for the China for a long time. You have to move to this one. How you can do this one? With technologicals like artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. Supply chain could quickly switch to alternative provider when regular suppliers fear the disruption. Oh, this time we are facing this problem. So we have to go to the automation, artificial intelligence, IoT application in the supply chain. The current crisis, the COVID-19 in the pandemic time, is an opportunity to reset a system that has relied on outdated processes. So what we are using for a long time, global supply chain phenomena, now is the time we have to revise it. Creating the smart, agile supply chain is the key to building a global trade and investment network that's capable of weathering the future storms. So we assume that the future storm is coming. So now this is the time you have to think how to design smarter, agile supply chain so that we can survive in the world based on our supply chain. So that is something that reshaping the future. I would like to give this floor to our moderator, Professor Majdi, and the panelists. They will discuss. So if you have any question, you can send me email. I'd like to reply. So before finishing, I'd like to give a special thanks to the AIBPM, especially my friend Dr. Liam for his this kind of innovation to add this webinar in his platform. Thank you.